turn this down. I hope I'm not on mute. All right, all right, all right. Let's see. Okay. And good afternoon, good evening to everyone. Welcome to another live with me, Hanifa Nayela. I am here today to have a much needed conversation, in my opinion. Um, Thank you for being here with me, you guys. Peace and blessings to you. I hope you guys are enjoying your Friday thus far. If you're not, I hope that you leave here at least encouraged, at least uplifted in your spirit, at least provoked to do better in your own life. And so, thank you for being here. The first thing I'm going to do is some basic housekeeping. Guys, as usual, you'll see it at the bottom. If you want to follow me on Instagram, I am at the real Hanifa Nayela on Instagram. If you're feeling generous so that you won't ask, my cash app will be at the bottom for the entire show, but you can cash app me at $ Hanifa Nayela. That is my cash app. I want to go ahead and acknowledge the people who are in the house. First, we have Enne. Hey, Enne. Thanks for passing through, sis. I appreciate you and your support as usual. Hey, Darrell. Hi. Thanks for passing through, and thank you for your support, sir, and showing some love. I appreciate that. Ashan says hello, passing through. I'll catch the replay. That's all right, Ashan. Much respect to you for always showing support. Been here from the beginning. Hey sis, my sister says hey, good evening. Hey Tata, thanks for passing through. And I think that is all we have for now. As people come in, I will acknowledge them. If you are here and for the first time and you have not subscribed to the channel, make sure you do so at this time. If you have not hit the like button as yet, please make sure that you go ahead and hit the like button. Let me see what else. If you are here and you are lurking, don't lurk. We're kind over here. We're gentle over here. Please let me know you're here so that you can join the conversation, because I do engage with the chat. So don't just be a little lurker. Just come out of hiding and say hi to us, okay? We family over here. And so we have Cat K just coming through saying hello there to you, Cat K. All right, so I don't even want to delay us too long. I want to jump right into this because I know that this is going to be a very good, pleasant conversation. And so, Saraj, you are on mute. Do you want to unmute?
Yep,
Yeah.
yep.
Should I call you Ola?
Well, yeah, you could call me. They're all my names. Like, I would say all my names, but the majority of people know me as Siraj. But
Okay.
other people, yeah, call me Ola
Okay,
Boy.
Siraj. Yeah. Okay, I'll call you Siraj. Okay. Hi, Siraj. How are you? It's been a while since we spoke. How are you today?
Yeah, I'm good. Yeah, I'm good. I'm in good spirits.
Okay. Well, I'm excited to have this conversation. I know that this is your territory. I know this is kind of the type of work that you focus on. And so I was super excited to have the conversation with you on this particular topic. I wanted to I'm just gonna jump right in. So I know you and I we was talking backstage briefly. We the so-called gender war came up, and of late I haven't really been calling it a gender war. I actually just think it's a fight for proximity and resources, but that's not what we're calling it. I think that it's become a competition more so than anything than a war, and it's a competition for proximity and resources. It is the I think it is us. It is black men and black women trying to ignore the elephant in the room, which is the system of racism, and feeling too disempowered to actually do something about it. And so we have turned our weapons on each other. So I think that's sort of what's happening. So I no longer call it a gender war for that reason, because the more that I examine it and analyze it, I am coming to the conclusion that it's not a gender war. And I know that we talked about this briefly behind closed door, but today we're going to be focusing mostly on why is it important for Black men to heal?
Mm.
So, I know, Siraj, you had mentioned that, this topic is what we're going to kind of go with. So, what are your thoughts around what has been your observation around healing as it pertains to Black men?
Yeah, I think for me, when it comes to healing, I think it when it comes to healing, I don't always feel that it's been put in the forefront when it comes to our brothers. I think a lot of the times when we offload, when it comes and anytime we're frustrated or irritated or whatever, we could be very vocal, where we could either get to a situation where we're shouting on top of our lungs, or we could get violent, or we could either abuse our own bodies, whether it's those which have certain habits, such as whether they're like alcohol habits, drug abuse habits,
Mm-hmm.
even eating habits,
Mm-hmm.
and when it comes to healing, I don't, everybody has their own thought process on what that looks like, and how that should be, how that translates to them. But when it comes to healing is so broad,
Yes.
not just about counseling. you know
Yes.
there's so much more to healing, especially when it comes to our people. So I just feel, as Black men, we need to get to that place of embracing it more and see the value in it, long term,
Mm-hmm.
because it's
Mm-hmm.
not, when it comes to healing, it's not a short term fix. It's
Yeah.
it's a journey. you
Yeah,
know
and I feel like you just said, a long-term fix. And I know, for one of the things that I have realized, and I know a lot of us don't really make that connection, but it's this idea, it's this need under the economic system that we currently under, which is capitalism, right? There is this urgency to always produce, right? And
mm,
an urgency to produce quickly, right? That gets in the way of um the healing process, that interrupts the healing process. There's this idea of you need to hurry the process on, because like you were saying, as far as the time, and I personally don't feel like anyone outside of that individual gets to put a cap on how long it takes them to heal, because like you said, we have different levels of trauma that that person may be dealing with. But I think the current system that we are living in, which here would be the capitalistic society, demands, right, a product. It demands that we produce, and that we produce now, right? There
mhm,
is no grace from capitalism for you to rest, for you to take time, for you to even properly grieve, right? For you to heal. You see people, like, for example, women, we give birth, we got to get right back to work. You have an injury at work. I mean, at work, it's like, okay, you have a certain time that they give you, so everything is a rush. And I think that it's no different when it comes to the healing process. So you
mm.
see people like, I went to therapy 3 times, and they think like that's enough. And even though we know couch therapy is not enough, especially for our people. But what do you think? We have a question. My sister gave a question real quick for you. She's asking, why are Black men so afraid of healing and going to therapy? What are your thoughts around that?
Just, basically it's just the ego, really, when it comes to our vulnerabilities. And when it comes to our vulnerability,
Mhm.
a lot of brothers out there find it challenging to express that, because of how other brothers will perceive them, how the sisters are going to be, how they will perceive them, and just being in a space of just being in a space of this whole kind of nakedness feeling, where they feel that they don't have their shield to protect them, when it comes to doing whatever they need to do on the battleground. And I think when it comes once again, when it comes to this healing process, we need to understand that it's an individual journey, you know, regardless of what anyone on the outside feels and thinks about you as an individual. You know, I think a lot of our people just in general see it as something where they're going to be sent to the electric chair or something like that. And it's definitely something which it helps you strengthen, you know, a lot of attributes and, you know, various areas. And I just feel that, you know, we should not take it for granted, because it's something which if we basically don't do it, then we're going to continue to be crippled in all of these areas when it comes to systemic racism and oppression, you know. So
Yeah, and I kind of just want this conversation to flow
mhm,
between us. You know, I don't necessarily want it to feel like an interview style. Just want it to flow as a conversation between a black man and a black woman, pretty much
mhm,
about black men in therapy. So don't feel that pressure of you're being interviewed. We're just having a conversation.
that's cool.
Um, so I personally feel, and you can tell me what you think about this thought. I think that there's a gendering that has happened to therapeutic services. And when I say that, I mean, and I think it is what is required of you as far as therapy, which is vulnerability. And for
Mm,
some reason, vulnerability has almost like a feminine feel to it to a lot of men. To be vulnerable is almost for a lot of men to be soft, right? And that's
mm,
also because how men are socialized. And so when you say you need to go to therapy, you're asking them to maybe tap into a part of themselves that they've never really been encouraged to tap into. And now they're these big grown men, you know, and you're asking them to go to therapy. And now you're talking about, tell me how you feel, right? And no one has ever cared how boys feel, black boys feel when they're growing up, or, you know, and then now you're asking these adult males to feel. So for me personally, I think that at least from what I've seen, a lot of black men shy away from the therapy piece. If they are going, it's very hush hush. Now, don't get me wrong, it's a bit trendy now. So I think a lot more men are actually saying it out, you know, that they're going. But for the longest while, if you went, it was like shush, right? Because only crazy people go to therapy, right? At least within the
mm,
black, yeah, that's what black people thought of it.
yeah.
What are your thoughts around kind of like therapy being preserved for a specific gender and that being a barrier to why our men may have some apprehension about going to therapy?
Boy, that's a loaded question. That's an interesting question. Question. I think you've kind of expressed it with what you with what you basically explained in regards to you know, men just perceiving it as like maybe a, you know, a feminine thing, but at the end of the day, um healing is also growth. You
Mm-hmm.
know, healing without it, we can only go so far. So if we don't recognize, you know, the those areas which, you know, where we've been either traumatized or you know, feel like a discomfort, then we won't. We the only other way we would tend to express ourselves is something which creates like a self-destructive pattern.
Mm-hmm.
You know, self-destructive patterns of behavior. You know, whether it's our eating, drinking, even our temperament.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so I think with when it comes to brothers, as you said, you know, more I think more brothers are, you know, finding, you know, I think they're, searching for something which can help them in that process. And once again, when it comes to healing, it's not just about going to counseling services. There's like other platforms or
Mm-hmm.
initiatives which are set up where we have like men's groups
Mm-hmm.
and so forth, or rites of passage services and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
And all of these things help. They all help.
Yeah.
Comes to our own self-development, in regards to our transitional stages from male to manhood.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You said I'm gonna acknowledge some people that just came in. Just bear with me 1 minute. We have born eternal Lord Allah, peace, righteous minded family, peace to you as well. Thanks for being here and supporting. Who else do we have here in the chat? I think I saw my sister. Hey Ma'at. She says peace family. Peace to you as well. Ma'at speaks. Okay, I think that's everyone. Ma'at also says, yes, no evolution without healing. Okay. So can you tell me what has been your journey, your healing journey? What has that looked like? Like what set you on the path of healing? When did that start and what set you on that path?
That's an interesting one. Yeah, that there's a few things. I think my situation was there was a number of different situations. I think there was a time where UK hit a major recession, and I at the time, the organization I was working for were basically, just giving out redundancies. So
Mhm.
for those who are overseas, what don't know what that is, that's like getting laid off and
Mhm.
so forth. And I think during that time as well, um, I was basically just on a different path. I was doing stuff where I had like a promo company. I was working with like urban glamour models at the
Mhm.
time,
Mhm.
and I was pretty different from the person I am now. And there was this, I had ongoing internal issues with certain family matters which
Mhm.
was going on. And I think last but not least, I think at the time I was also coming out of a breakup with a relationship I was in. So I think during that time I needed a time out. So I ended
Mhm.
up going back to Africa for a bit. And because it was a long time since I last been back there. So I think when I went out there, when I visited, I went to Nigeria. And it was just so refreshing being back in the motherland. As those who travel there, it was just refreshing. It was just kind of seeing different perspectives of how, although I'm Nigerian, I was raised here. So when my mum moved from Nigeria to the UK, she moved with like a pregnant stomach, which had me,
Yeah.
so um yeah. So for me it was like really seeing my brothers and sisters out there just live humbly, as well as going through their trials and tribulations or struggles, on a different part of the globe.
Mhm.
And yes, coming back gave me a different perspective on things. I started to change. I started to also see things I needed to work on, and I wanted to get a bit more creative. So the things with what I was doing with the urban glamour models, I kind of just left that behind, which kind of diverted me into the conscious community. But just before diverting me going into that direction, I was working on putting together a documentary called The Man in the Mirror.
Mhm.
And I wanted that was more or less the starting point. So from my travels back to Africa and coming back just
Mhm.
with new ideas and wanting to make certain changes, I felt, what, I needed to get out all of the issues I had within internally,
Mm-hmm.
and I felt I needed to express them in this documentary because at the time, although went through unemployment, and I was like unemployed. It was something silly, like 3 years, 3 to 4 years. I ended up, going into voluntary work. So I ended up working in the public school system, and I was working with an interventions team with black boys who were on the verge of being excluded from the public schooling system.
Right.
So when I stepped in that situation, it was a flashback of me. So it was more or less, although I was doing the work to support them, it was also something which was helping me
Okay.
recognize that these are there's some traumas you still need to resolve. So that's what kind of led me to do the documentary, to kind of let the people in our community know, or just provide an insight of how things were for me as a Nigerian growing up in England, through obviously the background I've had, being in the foster care system, being abused sexually, physically, emotionally, and going through all of those trials and tribulations. And those situations was something I was suppressing.
Yeah.
And so, because I grew up with I think after, because my father wasn't here yet, he was still in Nigeria. But when he came here in the mid-80s, I think when he came in the mid-80s, that's when I more or less mid to late 80s were leaving the foster care system. I went through identity crisis, and my father couldn't see, obviously, because my father has like the old school Nigerian thought process when it comes to discipline.
Yeah.
He was very aggressive.
Mm-hmm.
And I was a quiet person back in the day. I was quiet, even I know people see me asking questions in school, but ask these questions, I was quiet and stuff like that. And I was suppressing this emotion, and that anger rubbed off of me. So as I was growing, I was like a ticking time bomb,
So, Raj, quick question. So I just want to make sure I'm clear. So there's a point you got into the foster care system in UK, right?
Yes,
And your dad hadn't reached into the country yet. So
yeah,
you were in the
yeah,
were you in the foster care system because there was no other family member to take you?
Yeah. So what's interesting is when my mum moved here, she stayed with one of her older siblings and her younger sibling, what now lives in Canada. So there was her brother, and one of her sisters, and my sister already had a child on the way. So my mum and her sister were pregnant more or less similar time.
Okay.
You understand what I'm saying? Like more or less the same time. So I've got like a cousin was a few weeks my senior, and there's also, my cousin's brother who's also in his 40s. So it was difficult for my auntie to look after me, and my uncle, he was young then, and he had to kind of get into, education and find work, because those times we was all, I think, when I was born and my mum was staying with my aunt, we were like 6 in like a 2-bedroom apartment.
Okay.
So yeah, I think one of the reasons also why I went into foster care, because it was something which was quite common in the United Kingdom with Africans migrating to the United Kingdom, and this really took off from the 1950s onwards. And it was a thing where a lot of these Nigerians would come over to work, or to utilize the education system.
Yeah.
But at the same time they did this, we was still coming with a colonial mindset.
Yes.
Thinking that it will be beneficial for their children to be placed in the foster care system, which predominantly had white carers in that system.
Wow. Yes,
Yeah,
I think okay, so I remember this. I'll pause 1 second because I'm gonna come back to that because I remember this now. Now it's coming back to me. I remember your story. Hey OG Patrice, thanks for coming through, sis. I appreciate you. Okay, so Sarah, so now I want you to give the audience a clear picture of this. So what was happening in the UK at the time, right? Is because imagine you got a picture, these are Nigerian immigrants coming into the UK. They really don't have, because there's no concept of foster care in Nigeria. Not
mm,
not the foster care system, right? There's no foster care system in the way that we know it that exists on the continent in that way, right? Am I correct on that?
yeah,
So your family is coming over here, and in the foster care system, the foster parents in the UK were mostly white people, correct?
mm.
So are you saying that like people will come from Nigeria and they thought that they were doing their children a favor, but because of their colonial mindset, by putting them in the care of these people? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, in regards
Okay.
to them benefiting, thinking they would benefit from the education system and
I got
become
you.
successful,
Mm-hmm.
within the system, that we all know today.
Mm-hmm.
But I think one of the biggest problems which people were overlooking is a lot of these children will then start to grow up with identity crisis.
Identity. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, with not, with not basically, just following or abided by their culture, and also not appreciating and respecting their culture, and more or less adopting the Western your European culture, and if there's a term for this situation which was happening called farming, you know uh
Yes.
term
Mm-hmm.
called farming. And this was once again, this is something, there's a movie out on it as well,
Right.
farm, which I don't know if you've seen it. Obviously the
Mm-hmm.
movie Farming is very similar, not
Okay.
exactly the same, but very similar to
Yes.
my own personal story. And
Mm.
there was so many uh West Africans in that foster care system where they couldn't even keep um like solid records of how many of them were actually in the system. And also, there were young Nigerian children in the care system who were also abused.
Yes.
I was one of them. I was sexually
Yes.
abused in that system. So um it's all of the stuff I was witnessing from that time I had in the foster care system. And when I left the foster care system, I moved back to London, because at the time I was in south of England. I was in a place called Brighton. So when I left Brighton and came back to um,
London.
London, I had to adapt to my
Wait, how long were you in foster care?
5.5 years.
And you went in at what age? Do you
Two,
remember?
two,
Two.
yeah,
So, okay, so that's about almost 8 years old.
almost, yeah.
Okay, and so you went back to London. This is when your dad came and got you? Is that what it is?
Well, yeah, my dad probably came a year or two before when he
Okay.
got, but he just felt that it was time, because I had a younger sibling also who was born, who didn't enter that system.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess when my parents had to both work, I was left to raise my younger brother, who was only a few months old, and I
Mm-hmm.
was literally a baby myself.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so I had to clothe, feed, because obviously there was another sibling what came a couple of years after that. So I wasn't even put
Oh,
into school yet. I
okay.
went, because when I was in foster care, I was in like I went to attended a private Catholic school where there was hardly any blacks in that school. There was probably like three indigenous people. That's it. That's it.
Wow.
Yeah, and I went through a lot of racism and so forth. Even when I came back to visit, before, I got knowledge of self and stuff like that.
Were you able to talk about when you left? Because now you're saying you were like around 7.5, almost
Yeah, yeah,
8.
7.5, yeah.
You were old enough to vocalize it, but like since you suffered, like I'm assuming it wasn't just you said sexual abuse, but I'm assuming physical abuse as well, right?
Well,
Like probably
the f-
multiple different, like multi-layered abuse.
yeah, well, the
Go ahead.
the physical abuse mainly came from my father,
Okay. Okay.
but I also had situations where, I was, we went on certain trips with I went on trips with the foster carers during like the school holidays and so forth. And I used to, there used to be sometimes there was a group of white boys would want to try to jump me, but I ended up, fighting them and, like roughing them up and so forth. And
Yeah.
that was something which I went through, on quite a few occasions, so that's just how it was. The racism was probably a lot worse back then.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, in the UK
Oh.
and so forth. So that's just something I was dealing with it. So yeah, we dealt with certain things firsthand over here as well. Just maybe similar to the States, not exactly the same because we had
Yeah,
a
yeah. The
yeah.
the foster care situation, I know about the farming in the UK. And that's only because I read, but a lot of people aren't familiar with it. And I do know there was a movie that was done around it. And because when we understand foster care here, uh your children are usually removed from you. The only time, and I've worked with child welfare before, so I kind of know what that looks like. I can remember one time um I was at the what they call the CFSA building, which is the umbrella agency, right? And I was sitting in there with another client, and a mother came in. The little girl must have been about, she had to have been about 11 or 12, I would say. No more than 13, but definitely between 11 and 13. And I was just sitting there and dealing with my own client that I was with. And the mother came in. She came to the security at the front and she told them, y'all take her. And she walked out and left the teenage girl there. And I'm watching the whole commotion. So now the little girl is like, she's kind of like confused, not confused, but like, can I leave? Like looking. And she ended up running behind the lady. I don't know if that was her mother, but I know that she actually came and just kind of like, you guys can take her. So what I've seen where parents do that, you were pretty young, but from what I'm hearing in the UK, the immigrants that were coming in actually thought that that was a good thing to do, where is to surrender your children over to the system so that they can go into the homes with these white people and maybe perhaps have access to like a good life and a good education within that whatever the system is in UK. Whereby here, the most of the times children are brought into foster care because they're removed from their parents.
Yeah.
And there are those rare cases like the one I just gave you where I've known parents to come and surrender, but it's usually teenagers because they have reached the point with their 16-year-old or their 17-year-old where the situation is unhealthy. It's toxic. They're fighting all the time, and of course there's major dysfunction in the family. And so a lot of the only children that I've ever seen really surrendered over to child welfare is teenagers. But I know that it happens. You get what I'm saying? So when you say that, it's very interesting because in UK, like you were saying, a lot of immigrants were coming in, but it wasn't for the same reason. They wasn't giving their children over for the same reason as that woman who came into the building and said, "You guys take
Yeah.
her." That lady was frustrated. You're saying these immigrants literally was like, "Oh, this is a good thing." You know what I mean? Almost
Yeah.
like what do you call those schools? Where you stay on campus. When you send your children away to school.
College.
No, not no, 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 no. This is what like the
Um,
rich boarding schools, boarding schools.
okay, yes,
Almost
yeah, boarding
right,
school.
almost treating
My
it
bad.
almost like a boarding school.
Yeah, boarding school. Yeah,
Yeah, but
yeah.
I wanted to ask. So I was asking you at 8 now. So you left out or whatever. Was there anyone in your family that you can say, hey, I was sexually abused with over here? Well, so it sounds like not your dad, but did you have anyone around at that time to maybe have to express that to, or is it something you had to hold in?
Well, num no, because it happened when I was a young age. Obviously, it's the wrong thing and so forth. But it was a thing where, although it's crazy because obviously, he was told not to, don't say anything.
Okay.
No,
Okay.
so it's more or less, it was kind of swept on the back of my mental Rolodex. It was just, but I always remembered it.
Yeah.
I always remember it took place. So it's just one of those things where um, I felt, and if when I got a bit, when I grew a bit, I don't like using the word old because, so when I became a bit more senior,
Uh-huh.
it was a situation where I just didn't tell anybody about it and just kind of moved on with my life.
Mhm.
However, I still was experiencing other hardships, because obviously, although I left foster care and I came out of that, because one of the reasons why my father took me out is because when my dad did a test, so what he ended up doing is he asked me what color am I? So I
Mhm.
turned the back of my palm and said I was white.
Mhm.
So I had to, I got taken out in that environment, because my father was probably thinking he was there for too long.
Yeah.
And it kind of crippled me in various ways. But obviously, coming back to London, where at the time, in a lot of the inner city neighborhoods and so forth, you would see like more of our own people. So there'd be mainly Indians and blacks. You'd
Okay.
find Indians and blacks mainly, and
Okay.
and certain people from Asia, like China and so forth. And I had to kind of adapt seeing people, my own people I weren't even seeing regularly. And it weren't easy because I was going through that. I had a father who was physically abusive, he would hit on my mother certain times. He will, beat me, and obviously when my younger brother was growing, he would beat him as well. Um, and this was more or less when my sister was, well, my younger sister. Obviously, I had a sister what passed away before me, but
Mhm.
I had like my younger sister at the time. She was obviously young, so I think maybe because she was the last born and she was a girl, they didn't really trouble her like they troubled me and
Yeah.
my brother. So, and I also had my cousins. I spent a lot of time with, and yeah, I had to go through that physical abuse because my dad was a person which always felt he had to, be authoritative, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
how he was brought up.
Yeah.
So you could be, you could get beaten for just spilling over a plate of cornflakes.
Mm.
It was that deep. And also, I think when I got into my teenage years and I ended up going to like secondary school, which you don't call high school in the States,
Yeah.
I was unaware of the street gangs, the people in in the crews and so forth. So I kind of got caught up in certain,
Mhm.
crossfires, and I used to roll with people in the neighborhood as well who, were known for getting into situations where they were getting, they was carrying around knives,
Mhm.
robbing, certain stores and so forth, and just doing all kinds of crazy stuff.
Mhm.
And also, some of these people went to my school as well. So I also went for a stage where I was getting influenced through this as
Mhm.
well. Not necessarily doing exactly the same thing, but I kind of got influenced because, you know, I used to hang around with these people in my neighborhood. But what was crazy is we had like postcode wars, you know, so there's certain people from different parts of the postcode code what had beef
Yeah.
and couldn't cross that other side, or you get into a situation. And I think because I was young, I was like more or less the person which wanted to kind of be cool with everybody. I squashed certain beefs and stuff. I also got into certain situations myself where I was held at knife point, gun point. I also been in situations where I beat quite a few people, like because I used to had that aggression from my father, so I used to get in a lot of fights, you know, beating people up and even getting beaten up myself. And yeah, there was so much what was
No, go
going on.
ahead.
There
Go
was so
ahead.
much going on, and this is all things I suppressed,
Yeah.
you know. So I was like a ticking time bomb. So because I was quieter back then, if anyone would say something, because I would take certain things personal, back then I was like a ticking time bomb. So if I
Yeah.
would just lash out in aggression.
Yeah, see that, and so I'm listening, and I'm just like, it sounds like almost like compacted trauma,
Yeah.
like one thing after the other, and it's like, something happens and it's not resolved, and before you can even get around to resolving it, or sometimes even in the midst of resolving that particular hurt or that pain or that trauma, then something else is compacted on that, right? And so now you have to deal with this something else, and now your energy splits. So now something gotta get pushed on the back burner, and so now something else happens, and you can go through life. All it takes, at least from my experience, all it takes is like that first. I don't know. It's something about when someone gets traumatized, especially around sexual abuse. It almost opens up this door for so many other kinds of abuse to enter in. I, this
Mhm.
this I've seen this story over and heard it over and over. Not your story per se, but like people where, especially who were abused at a very young age. I know of men and women who, yes, they were younger when they were sexually abused, and then before they even made 18, they were sexually violated again by a different person.
Mm.
That's a very common um, trauma story. But I guess the compacted trauma, like you was just saying, you went from one thing, you say I suppressed it, then something else come, you say I suppressed it, and it's all of this suppression, right? And for me, what I've seen, if we don't explode, we implode. And I think oftentimes when you implode, that can look like, things, thinking of like deleting yourself, um, or hurting somebody else. You know what I mean? It can go
Yeah.
either way. I actually think that a lot of black men, because the suicide rate for black men is increasing. I actually think that this is one of the issues, is the compacting of trauma that you just spoke about, because I've often seen that black men don't necessarily, and it's the society, it's the way that we socialize boys. There isn't many safe spaces for black men to unpack those traumatic experiences that you're talking about, and a lot of them don't get to do that until much older, but they have to carry that into adulthood, right?
Yeah.
um so I'm thinking, at least from what I've seen, you're talking about depression, you're talking about suicidal ideations, you're talking about these things that a lot of black men are going through quietly, by the way, quietly, because it's not okay for black men to complain. You cannot complain, you cannot whine, you cannot be defeated, right? You have to be tough. And so a lot of our men are carrying these things in them, and then we're asking them to do relationships with us.
Mm.
So can you tell me, relationships wise, like, I'm assuming you had girlfriends and stuff, did those experiences show up in your relationship, and if so, how did they show up?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say in my earlier stages, because as I said, like You know, I had to shake the monkey off my back. So it took some time because all I was seeing when I was younger was the Beckys when I was younger. And
Mm,
it wasn't until I would say halfway through high school, I said, you know what? I think, and that's when I started to just because the awakening was happening very slowly. Because I was seeing more I was seeing sisters.
yeah.
I was like, yeah, man, this, you know, and you know, so the brothers and sisters were making fun out of me in school, like, yo, we this white girl and stuff like that. I was like, I'm not gonna experience that again. I was like, hell
Hmm.
no. So I'm not. So I think when I turned 15, just kind of didn't really look back,
Okay.
and I think when I was 16, yes, when I was 16, like first 16 going 17, the relationship I was in, met another beautiful sister. She was also Nigerian, but she was like born over here, like myself.
Okay.
And we kicked it for a couple of years, and and like we kicked it actually when I was like even after I left school as well.
Hmm.
But I guess the issue I had was because I had an abusive father, and my mother was emotionally abusive. It was a thing where when you hear you're never gonna be, because we're Nigerians,
Hmm.
you have to. The only way they see you successful is if you become a banker, a lawyer, or a doctor or engineer. If you don't come one of those four things, you failed.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
I was more of a creative person. Like I was an A to C student in art. Although I was good at math when I was younger, I had more of a passion for art.
Hmm.
So I was good at math and geography, but
Okay.
art, art and athletics was, sprinting was my thing. You know, that was my thing, and I used to be entered in competition for creative writing and stuff like that. And I think, not for me to steer off track too much, but the sister I got with, I think the first sister, my first love, who I got with, um, she, she was an HC student as well, but I felt she was a lot more bright than me
Okay.
because she was hardly getting like C's. She was just getting
Okay.
straight A, B's, and so forth. And I think when you hear, it's like whether it's an echo chamber. When you're hearing, you ain't gonna be shit. That's
Hmm.
what I kept on her. So that kind of made me kind of fall back and say, you know what, I don't think I'm good for you. This, that, and the other. So it was self doubt I was having.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
self doubt. That was in the first situation with me and that person. But as I
Oh,
started
so
to,
you're saying because of the emotional and verbal abuse that came through your mother, like being told you're not gonna be anything, you're not good enough, and you met this sister, you thought you felt like you wasn't worthy of her.
yeah, yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
got you,
yeah,
got you.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Not at the beginning things were fine, but obviously I think a year gone past, and I was feeling like that, and I just kept on, and I weren't answering my calls and so forth, and
Mm-hmm.
very, I was quite young, and I think after that situation, because obviously we got back together after we took some time out, and she was hurt, so we couldn't. She didn't. She couldn't continue because of the pain she felt when I cut the cord.
Yeah, yeah,
So I kind of blamed myself as well as I was blaming both of us. So I blamed
yeah.
myself. But I was upset with her and like realized after shit, yo, I made a mistake, and that was like a domino effect when I was getting into different, other situations with sis, because I had then I started to have trust issues and so forth, and it gosh, it followed me out of my teens into all into my 20s. It weren't until I hit maybe 30. I
Wow.
think,
Okay.
yeah, it was a while. Yeah, about late 20s, 30. Things just decided to change, and I guess because that's
Mm.
when I came into the community. So
Yeah.
that was coming into the community was It gave me a sense of not just the belonging, but I think it was more the sense of being grounded as well. Yeah, and I used the opportunity, as I said, because obviously I did the documentary. I used the opportunity to use the documentary in order as a tool to start my healing journey, but at the same time provide that information, not just of what I was going through in the community, but certain circumstances when it came to systemic racism and oppression in
Yeah.
various areas, whether it's parenting, the education system, mental health, employment, all of those different things, just to provide more insights to see, just to show people out there what was going on. And I didn't even feel that it was going to make, I wanted it to make an impact, but I didn't realize that it was going to make an impact.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
impact. I did one of my first events for it, and I think during the time just before, because I was in contact with a couple of people from the States because of one or two people in the community out here what no longer do community work. But I think because I met a couple of people who were overseas, I connected with them, and that's when Facebook was getting a bit more popular, and you start, people just find you, as a friend, suggesting they watch your posts. And I think because certain people were following my posts from the States for many years and so forth, they kind of just loved what I was saying. And I met there was somebody who connected with me from Chicago, and we became friends. And when we became friends, I was telling that person, yeah, this is the idea I've got. I'm gonna do this documentary, blah blah blah. And it's funny because obviously during that stage, what's funny around that particular time was I think this was not too long after Umar Johnson, because I remember Umar Johnson came here in, I think this was like 2012 when he first came in. And I remember when I was gonna do the documentary, I remember I was gonna ask him, but we lost contact and stuff like that. But obviously my sister friend what lives in Chicago, just send a donation, because I was trying to see if I could get some funds, which I weren't really successful at that. So I funded the whole project to myself. I funded it all on myself, and it cost money to put together. And it started to resonate with people overseas, and that was more or less the beginning of the healing journey. Because afterwards I had to also change up other things. So it wasn't the emotional stuff with the trauma and so forth. It was also my physically. So because I took time out of training for years, ended up working out at the gym, also changing my eating. Going to the holistic store. Because I know when people say, "Oh, okay, your skin's so good," this, that, and the other. But that's because I feel the maintenance of the body is imperative, and I'm not perfect, because we all have a moment, slip and stuff like that. But you eventually learn about how to keep that intact, because it's not just about going to the gym. Like, you can also do different forms of exercise, and also stretching is important. Also self-care. We can implement different things like spa, swimming, going to the sauna, the steam room. But also when I attend a holistic store, and I pick up different things, whether it's Corella powder, sea moss, bladderwrack. There's so many different different things you use for the body. And this is what I was doing. I was just changing my diet slightly. And when I was doing that, I started to also put together action plans for myself. And also I started to identify other stuff, because at one point I was a bit of a hoarder.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And the beauty of the beauty of learning all of these things was I was able to give back, and that's why I've got my platform, My Brother's Keeper International. You
Mm-hmm.
know, we you know, provide online resources to brothers to work, you know, with them when it comes to you know, working on various areas of self-development, because normally with certain things like that, which I've highlighted, that, you know, me being a hoarder, that was also part of the baggage.
Mm-hmm.
So when you kind of I think there was a time, because I was moving around that time as well, I was throwing out stuff I no longer
Okay.
needed. And when I
Mm-hmm.
was throwing out stuff, which I was, and it was like an emotional attachment. So when I was throwing out stuff as well, it also made me feel lighter.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. It sounds like you were um getting rid of a lot of dead weight,
Yeah,
and you wasn't just doing it in emotionally and psychologically, it was manifesting in your life on the physical realm as well.
yeah,
So you were, as you was getting rid of some dead weight psychologically, emotionally, even spiritually, it actually manifested in the physical as well. Because the reality is that physical, spiritual, emotion is all connected. Like people say, as without, so within, right? As above, so below. It's the same thing. Like once you start to do the work within yourself, it starts to manifest on the outside. So technically getting that, where you'll see people start to heal and all of a sudden they start to clean up their house and get rid of like certain things, because you know some of that stuff may carry a certain energy or a certain memory, or you just realize that you know you have overconsumed and you need to get you need to get rid of some of that stuff. You said something really interesting not too long ago, but you didn't use this word, but you were speaking pretty much about self-sabotage, where you were giving the story with the young lady that you met,
mm,
and you know she was doing really well, and you talked a little bit about where that came from. And I oftentimes don't know that a lot of us make the connection with self-sabotage and not being spoken to in a loving and caring way by the people who are supposed to love us the most. And so, if my mother thinks that way about me, then it must be true, right? I think of my children, my boys, you know. They hang on to what I say. What I say to them is the gospel, right? What I
mm,
say to them, they believe because I'm mommy. And so when you hear that messaging from a really young age from the people who was supposed to care about you the most, or who's supposed to know you better than anyone else, as a child, you hear that, you internalize that, like, okay, she says I'm ugly, so I must be ugly. You know, she says I'm dumb, so I must be dumb. And kind of like when you grow up, how that manifests. And one of the ways that actually manifests, or the damage of that uh, manifest in your life, is through self sabotage. Your worth, right? Your worth is very low. Your self-worth is very low. And so when you come into situations where it's like you don't think you're deserving of success, you don't think you're deserving of like good stuff, and so you meet a good woman, right? And it's like, oh yeah, she's too good for me. And so men, at least stories I've heard from men, will find a way to sabotage the relationship, whether it's ghosting. You know what ghosting is, right? Where you just
yeah,
disappear.
cool.
Right, you end up ghosting, or you just end up being dishonest. You're juggling multiple women. There's so many different manifestations of these things that we don't even put together. And so the direction, because we have about 20 more minutes, and I wanted to go in the direction of when you okay, so you told us about your journey and some of the things that you had to do, which was really good, because you were talking about what was happening in the spiritual I mean, not spiritual, in the physical realm, what you was physically doing, and also the what was happening within your own self, right? And I like the way that you was telling your story in that way, because I was picturing it. um My question though is for you, and I know like for men, the journey of healing looks a little different for women, right? Because our thought process is different. How we show up, how we emote, how we express, two completely different things. So being that you're a part of a community, are there are there things that we can do to support our brothers? I'm talking about we as women can do to support our brothers that may be on that journey. Are there things that maybe you would want women to know that they
Um,
probably can do better to support the brothers who may be on that same healing journey?
yeah, absolutely. I would say for one, we just in general we need to unplug from seeing everything from a European lens. So what I mean by that is because the society has is kind of not is tainted our vision and our mindset of how we see each other. And I think when we kind of dive deep, I'm not
Mhm.
trying to use systemic racism and oppression as an excuse,
Right.
but when we understand how that has affected the psyche,
Hmm.
the psychological mind, um, as well as not just write things off straight away, because
Hmm.
at the end of the day, if we I think when it comes to certain sisters, there's always a tolerance level because they might basically have lower tolerance because of what the past ex has done.
Hmm.
So I think it's always good to kind of um have an approach, because I don't want to sound like I'm trying to like command the
No, I
empress,
mean,
stuff like that. So for
mhm.
me, it's more to do with, I think it's just trying to sit down with our brothers and have a conversation with them to try to understand where they're coming from, um, when they might see something which might feel what might feel what's not right.
Mhm.
And if even if they feel, okay, you know what, I'm not prepared to work with him in the aspect of being in a relationship with him, but I can at least guide him to go and seek support to
Mhm.
help him in order to work. Because I think another problem with brothers, and that's why I am so blessed with the work I put in. I had to put a lot of work in.
Mhm.
Um, I think when it comes to a lot of brothers, a lot of the escapism will be having, sex with multiple women,
Mhm.
which is not necessarily doing any justice for you. And even if you put the STDs to the side, it's because you ain't gonna feel you ain't gonna fill that void with him. So
Mhm.
at the end of the day, when it comes to the brothers, they just need to take their time to go through a cleansing process, mind, body, and soul, and switch up.
Mm.
Not even try to even get in no sexual intimacies with women. At least, if they, because I know it for men, it's difficult.
Yeah.
But even if it's a situation where they take at least 12 months out, might
Mm.
be difficult. I've done it.
Mm.
I've even done longer.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
when they take their time out then and they start to learn more about themselves.
Yeah.
They start to learn, that they can become disciplined, and they can also work on certain various areas of their own self-development to enhance them, to become a better version of themselves before entering any next situation. And the whatever we put out there is what we get back. So these once these brothers work on these things, when it comes to their healing journey, they're only going to manifest the women in their life which they need, not
Mm.
necessarily the woman they want, but necessarily the women they need. Yeah, the women they need, and
Yeah, there's a whole conversation going on around that right now to where um there was a whole conversation around, like, this is when Kevin Samuels was alive, and then they were having a conversation around how women need to lose weight and do these things if they want to keep men, and all of these things. And so there was a conversation around where um it was very obvious that a lot of our brothers were finding themselves in these kind of situations because they weren't necessarily going after what they needed. They was going after what they wanted. So the girl has a nice body, she has a nice face, not even necessarily her mindset is beautiful. Like you were saying, the one sister was pretty smart, like pretty good in school. Not really looking at it like that, but like, okay, what does she look like at my arm, right? And then by the time they turn around, they are in relationship and having a child with this woman who they don't really have a full picture of. And now they're no longer together, and now she's crazy. And for me, my thing is, no, those signs were there before. You just, like you said, one, you attracted exactly who you are at this time, right? That's who you've attracted in your life. And then secondly, you choose to look past the red flags because she was cute,
yeah,
and you were happy about the attention she was getting when she was on your arm. And for me personally, and I have sons, and I'm going to talk to my sons on this level when they get older and they start calling themselves dating. I'm not ready for that. But no, seriously, one of the conversations I'm going to have is not to ignore red flags. Like, I give the example like this. You knew that that woman you was with was nasty. You know that she had a temper. You know that she would curse people out. You know she was a mean girl. Like, you knew these things because she's cut up in front of you many times, right? But
yeah,
you thought it was okay because the gun wasn't turned on you yet. You see what I'm saying? Like, you knew she was like rude when she cursed the waitress out when y'all went out to dinner, right? You knew that she had a temper where she and the lady at the register had it out because the lady said something that she didn't like. Like, you've seen all of
Uh,
this behavior, but
but
now
that goes.
it's an issue because that behavior now is being used on you. But those red flags were always there, and
But
I think
that
I'm
but
in. Go ahead.
that goes into that goes into another um it kind of all of this interlinks. So that goes on to something else I'm gonna mention.
Mm-hmm.
Um with when it comes to our brothers, because of the physical appearance. And look,
Yeah,
I like a sister, a good looking sister, but it's more
you
to do
should
with,
go for what you're attracted to.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah, yeah, yeah. But I think for me, I've learned to more tap into my spiritual gifts, such as discernment. Discernment
Okay.
was given to us for a reason, and that's our
Yeah.
spiritual antenna,
Yeah.
which we don't we take for granted. And I think when it comes to, because the sisters, the sisters are, because they a lot of sisters are spiritually heightened now. A lot of the sisters are getting better at that, but with our brothers, we're not. I think we're still stumbling because of what you mentioned when it comes to just the physical appearance. You
Yeah.
understand? So because we get blind, because we get blinded with that. We as you mentioned, we overlook the red flags, and this is the problem now. So when brothers take to social media and then start saying all sisters are this, that, and the other, that once
Mhm.
again, as I said earlier, they're speaking from a wounded place.
Yes.
Just like our sisters speak from a wounded place. But you
Yeah.
have to never neglect that spiritual antenna. That whole discernment thing is something which we need to tap into. Trust me, because I've been there, and
Yeah, it'll keep you out of some trouble now. It may even
yeah,
save, it will save your life even. But I want to get to the comments real quick because I'm going to be wrapping up shortly, and I want you to talk about your Man in the Mirror project. So James says it's always healthier to let the pressure out. I agree. I agree. I agree. And I know that there just isn't a lot of support for that as it pertains to men. I feel like women, and it's just because of the nature of women too, because we tend, and again, socialization. Since we were young, has always been like that. You fall, you hurt yourself, your friends, your girlfriends when you're little. You okay? They might rub your back. You a boy and you fall. You be like, nobody, no, you're not asked if you're okay. You're told you're okay when you're a little boy. You're told you're okay. It's like, get up. You all right. You all right. Right? No one is asking you if you're all right. They're telling you you're all right. That's how boys are socialized in the community, right? But yeah, this is the other one here. Sexual intimacy. Okay, I'll share that shortly. Sexual intimacy is a form of therapy. I pray for the day that a lot of us get to this point. I just think that we have so much trauma around sex that we can't even begin to understand sexual intimacy on that level as yet. Right? So what happens is it's used as a release in a sense. So
Yeah.
there's a man that's frustrated, there's a woman that's frustrated, they want to get theirs off, and so they have sex. And because orgasm, or to ejaculate is almost it's a sense of relief. There's a relief that's there. So there's a release, right? But my thing is that you are bringing all of that junk with you
Yeah.
into that intimate relationship, into that moment. You're bringing that stress. You're angry. You're all of these things. So I agree with Kat K on this one. I just don't know, just like I feel about the polygamy conversation. I just feel like a lot of us are just not mature, emotionally intelligent to even discuss polygamy. And I'm being honest about that, right? So when it comes up, I'd be like, that's not even something that needs to be tabled right now because we are just not ready for that as yet. We got too many other things that we need to take care of before our mindsets can even wrap our head around that conversation. And I feel the same way with the sexual intimacy as a form of therapy. I hope that one day we get there. But right now, and some of us are there already now, let me just be clear. But for most of us, we are not looking at sexual intimacy from that angle at all.
Yeah.
I want to make sure I say hi to
I think
Wyatt.
emotional stability. If the situation is emotionally stable, then it can be a form of therapy. So,
Yeah. Hey, wireless woman, thanks for coming through and showing your support, sis. Ayo. Ayo. No, it's not Ayo. Ayo is Aya. No, my aunt had to help me the last time with this. Yeah, this thing. When I see words like that, I be all over the place. My accent just don't be getting it right. But okay. Ashan said, "Don't boycott me, please." Ashan, my man. Okay, so wireless woman said, Hanifa, tell him sexual incontinence is a sign of being spiritually disconnected. And that's very true as well. And I just think there's so much pain. I've been on YouTube for like a year now. And my observation, when I listen to a lot of our conversations between men and women and this so-called gender war, which is not, all I hear now is a lot of pain. A lot of pain. And what I'm realizing is that a lot of these people who are in these spaces bleeding all over each other, it's because in their real lives, they have no outlet. And so they come to these places and they have these kind of conversation. And for me, release how you can, but it's not necessarily conversations like this, is that we are beating up on each other for our own release. You know what I mean? Yeah. So
yeah, that could be.
You want to say anything to that?
Oh, sorry.
No, I say you want to say anything to that, to what I just said?
That could be problematic because when we do it, a lot, not, and I'm not saying everybody, but certain people may do it with an agenda. So when they do it, they may do it because and what's dangerous is, you're also going to have other vulnerable people on your friends list. And when they see that, they're going to tap into that and co-sign that. And that's where the problem starts. Then it more or less comes like a gang, which is one's against one sex and the other one is against the other. So yeah, and certain people know what they're doing, but just like you said, some other people, because they don't have an outlet.
Yeah. Yeah, and I also think,
Yeah.
Suraj, I also think too, the way that you see us communicate with each other in these public spaces. I had a conversation with Alkema, and she was telling me, we were talking about just like how we deal with each other, and I said, it's like we don't know any other type of love but tough love, and we talked about how tough love has hardened us. That tough love that we receive has hardened us. And so when we come to try to love on each other, it's still that rough, tough love. It's not a gentle, a gentle love. Like it's like we're ready to attack each other, to scratch each other's eyes out. And I think that is because a lot of us just don't have any positive points of references. We don't have, some of us come from homes where even the ones whose parents stayed married don't always have the most positive examples. I'm learning that, where people come from two-parent homes, but those two-parent homes were unhealthy environment. They just saw their parents fighting all the time. There was no love, there was no affection, there was a lot of disrespect. And so now all of us are coming out of these spaces, not all of us, but a lot of us are coming out of these kind of spaces, including two-parent households that were toxic. And then now we're coming in these spaces. And Suraj, I'm talking to you because you remind me of my uncle. You remind me of my father. And then how he was treating my mom comes to my mind. So now when you're talking, you might say something that reminds me of him. And so now I'm lashing out at him in you, because I don't personally know you, right? But I'm lashing out at him in you because I'm seeing that person in you. And I think there's a lot of that that's happening online in these conversations. And I keep saying, we're never going to get anywhere until we come to the conversation with transparency and honesty. And a lot of us come into these conversations very dishonest. I also do believe that there's a depth of conversation, a level of conversation that has to happen that cannot happen in these public spaces, not in these platforms, not on social media, because like I'll give you an example. You see how these people could comment on this chat? Okay, so imagine you trying to have a conversation where somebody is being extremely vulnerable, right? And then you have some idiot decide that they're gonna come in the chat, right, and just be like, oh, wow, cry me a river. You get what I'm saying? Yeah, like it's not a safe space to have that level of a conversation. So, and I understand that. I do think it's a place to start the conversation so that people can know that they're not alone out there. You know what I mean?
Unless you switch the comments off just for that moment. And then
right. And even when you switch the comments off, I just think that people are like, in their mind, and they're right. It's like, oh my gosh, this is going to be broadcasted for everyone to see. So you know how that go. And then also too, we have a loyalty to family as Black people. We don't air dirty laundry. That's not what we do. You know what I mean? And so there's a way that we want to talk about like our parents, even though they were abusive, we're still careful how we talk about them. So it's a lot that happens. But I do think that we come into these spaces and have these conversations, and we can't really have them in an honest way because everyone is guarded. Like everyone is guarded and there's no trust. There's no trust. The Black men don't trust the Black women. The Black women don't trust the Black men, and we get nowhere. We end up in really circular conversations, and we just tearing each other apart. And it's an ugly thing to see. Actually, it's very ugly to see. But yeah, I want you to tell us before we wrap up about this Man in the Mirror project, and let me go ahead and post your link as well.
Or the Yeah, so not I don't confuse anyone. Yeah, I've got a documentary called The Man in the Mirror,
Oh, okay.
um, which is about my life growing up as growing up as a Nigerian within the United Kingdom, and overcoming all the the obstacles and challenges when it comes to systemic racism and oppression. Um, Also, under the Man in the Mirror is the Man in the Mirror project, which I do, public speaking engagements on the unspoken truth behind a black man's abuse, or what's coming up next week, Sunday on the 6th, which is breaking the false narrative between the gender war between the black man and woman. How can our brothers and sisters protect each other?
Mm-hmm.
So that's what is currently produced from the Man in the Mirror project. I'm also founding member of another org called My Brother's Keeper International,
Mm-hmm.
which is an online platform which offers resources to black men to help with their self development.
Mm-hmm.
And within that, we have like a Black Men's Wellness Directory as well, with certain brothers in different parts of the diaspora, which offer various, which have who are service providers, which offer certain services to help with the mind, body, and soul.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Okay.
yeah,
Okay.
that's that. I think in a nutshell.
Okay. So I'm gonna wrap up. I did ask you about you answered the question about the what the sisters can do to support brothers who are actually on their healing journey, because um a lot of I see, hey Iyapo. Hey Iyapo, he says, oh, did I? Yeah, it's all right. You can catch it. We're actually about to wrap up, but it's all right. I what I want you to do, because you just mentioned how the sisters can support. So if there's a brother maybe listening, and I always say, oh, somebody might catch the replay, some young person might pick this up and say, oh, let me see what this is about. And they may be trying to find answers, like they know something is wrong, they're aware of the trauma that they've endured in their life, they're still a young brother, and they want to be better, like you said, they want to be like you did, they want to be better, they just don't know where to start. What advice would you give them as far as where they can actually begin that journey?
What you talking about, the men?
Huh?
You mean the
Yeah.
men?
Yes, 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 a young
Yeah,
man may be catching this.
yeah. I think honesty first and foremost. I think honesty, because if you can't be honest with yourself, then it, no matter what happens, what anyone else tries to do, or what you do, you're gonna always face a brick wall. So you
Mhm.
have to be honest with yourself, and also take accountability, regardless of how the situation plays out. You have to take accountability, because it's only you what can rescue you. So you have to take it upon yourself to you know work on you need to put pen to paper and draft out, what do I need to work on?
Mhm.
And once you do that, and that's why when it comes to journaling is key, because journaling allows you to express those thoughts and get those thoughts out on the paper.
Mm.
And
Mm.
that's also, it helps also when it comes to your self-development, and
Mhm.
also helps you formulate an action plan when you want to put together an action plan. But
Mhm.
also at the same time, get acquainted with brothers in the community which have these platforms and have these experiences which can help guide you. Don't even look
Mhm.
at it from, oh, this is going to cost me money, because at the
Mhm.
end of the day, we need to, when it comes to money, it's not that everybody has it, but it's how we manage our money,
Yeah.
and it's how we prioritize. And that's why when it comes to the our healing, it's a journey. It's not an overnight fix, you know. So we should use the internet and get acquainted with, not just myself, we could get acquainted with Sister Hanifa and anyone else in the Black community which has these resources. We're in the age of information now, so you could easily type in whatever in the internet. That's the whole point of having those things like hashtags and so forth, which I'm still trying to get used to because I'm old school in a way. So, and these things will come up, so you will eventually get to these points, because a lot of brothers and sisters will complain, oh, we don't have this, I don't have this out there. But have you tried looking? Have you tried to put, key in the right words? Or is it a laziness? So
I would say to because one of the things that's really disappointing to me as well is that a lot of young people are coming online and with pain, of course, and rage, and a lot of anger, and they are running into conversations, whether it's from or through or amongst Black women or amongst Black men, that's just spitting a lot of vitriol, and they end up getting caught in the web of just anger, right? And so now it's like, oh, these people are speaking to my pain, and I think a lot of our people are kind of like stuck, in that space, in that way of thinking, because in that echo chamber, in a sense, right? Because there's these people are speaking to their pain, so they keep coming back, and so they start to feel worse and more angry. It's the same thing with some of our women as well, young women. They come into this space, they're feeling a type of way. By this point, they probably done had some really terrible experiences with Black men, and they may not even be coming in the space to, like, rage at Black men. It might just be saying, yo, let me see what's on here, because I use TikTok, I use YouTube. Let me see what people are saying about this topic. And then they run
exactly.
into, they run into a woman that is in her angry phase, right? In her angry phase. And they get stuck. Then I think that's the part that hurts me the most, is that um our lack of awareness around that, how we use our platforms. Like, it bothers me, and I think it's because I come from the child welfare space, right? Like, that psychology background. I know that a lot of our young people are in a lot of pain, and so when I see some of the content that our people are putting out, I'm like, you guys are about to really create a damn volcano. It's about to erupt if we keep feeding, these people pain, these people hurt. So for me, I try to do what I try to do here by have the conversation. And even recently, I've been kind of really shifting a lot more on how I choose to have the conversations, because I know that I can be very, you know, very straightforward. Like you said, like how you say your dad was, right? Like, it's this way. And I know that I can be like that, but I also know that I can be very gracious towards people,
Yes.
right? As well. So I have a
That,
balance, because I think there's a
yeah.
place for that fire, and then there's that place for water as well. And it's just knowing the difference for me, because I know that our young people are in pain. Like, I'm so serious about, like, really in pain. Like, they are on the edge and they're about to jump, and they turn on their computer hoping that someone can talk them off the ledge of self-destruction, and they run into some damn conversation about how Black women just in shit, and we're the ugliest of all races and all of this other stuff. And then it's like, yeah, and it just ticks them over. So I try to be a little bit more responsible with my platform. And I think it's because that's always at the forefront of my mind, because it's always had to be at the forefront of my mind for like the last 15 years. And so coming in this space is no different. I just want us to do a better job. And so this is kind of why I wanted to just have a conversation with you. so that people can see healthy dialogue between the black man and the black woman, and we're discussing black men's pain, but nobody is mocking, nobody is, I just wanted to have that conversation. So I definitely appreciate you coming and
Yeah.
having a conversation with me.
Yeah, you're welcome. Maybe we might have to do a part two.
Yeah. Yeah, because I know you're kind of in between, you're kind of moving, like you were saying.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's cool. We could
Okay.
I won't be moved to the end of the year anyway. So even I'm ready for a part two. So
Yeah,
you
I will. Well, November. Yeah. So yeah, I'll have to do. I have a lot of part twos to do for a number of topics actually. So yeah. If you do, you have any closing remarks before I let you go?
yeah, probably just have two. Well, I'm just gonna basically just mention again. I don't
I'll
know
put
for
it in the chat
tuned
again.
in later. I've gotten a event this coming, no, not this Sunday, but next week Sunday on the 6th of November, which is a virtual event. How can our brothers and sisters protect each other? Um, Breaking the false narrative of the gender war between the black man and woman. So that event I have Sunday the 6th at 1 p.m. US Eastern time and 6 p.m. UK time. And yeah, I just hope like everybody can, take away what was the share between myself and Sister Hanifa as food for thought. Maybe it might be useful for anyone who you're related to, or even
Mm,
yourselves who can,
mm.
just tap into our platforms and, just yeah, utilize it the way what serves fit.
Okay. Thank you. I put your MBK International, guys. Check him out. That lineup that he has for the panel discussion, the virtual event, is a powerful lineup. He has some good, powerful elders that's going to be having that conversation. So I know it's and one of the elders that I highly respect. His wife is supposed to be it's a powerful discussion, so you guys make sure you check it out. It's not a whole bunch of money, and it will be virtual, so you don't have to come, you don't even have to travel anywhere. So definitely check it out. I'm going to continue to put his link in the it's MBK International, and make sure you check Siraj out. And Siraj, I have to say thank you for coming.
Yeah,
Thank you
you're
for
welcome. Is there anywhere I
being.
could post the flyer here or something like that? I'm not even too sure. You
No,
can't.
now I can't, but what you can do is send it to me and I can post it on my YouTube community wall for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah. Because if I put the link up, I think that would be because I know although we're saying it, they're probably like, where can I gain access to the event? So
Yeah, send it to me and I can put it on my wall. Send it to me my Facebook thing.
yeah,
My
I'll do.
yeah, the messenger, yeah, and I'll post it on my community wall on Facebook.
Yeah, no problem.
All right, thanks again for coming.
You
And Yapo,
most
Siraj, and I will see you again soon.
yes, you're welcome.
All right,
Yeah,
peace and
you take
blessings.
care of yourself. Peace.
Okay, you too. All right, guys. So I didn't intend to be here that long. So what I'm gonna do, I wanted Siraj to come and talk because I know he has a story to tell, and I know that that is the type of work he does because of his experience with the foster care system. He is actually the first person that I've ever heard talk about like the farming, which is what they label it in the UK, where immigrants was traveling to the UK and actually putting their children in foster care because foster care in the UK, foster parents were predominantly white. And a lot of immigrants thought that it was just a good move to place their children in homes with these white people because maybe they would have better access to like education and so forth. And he always tells his story about how that led to like sexual and well, pretty much sexual abuse while being under the care of those foster parents. And so I know he has his own healing journey. So I just wanted to come and have a light conversation. That conversation is not really light, but it comes off a little light when you're dealing with someone who has already done most of the work around like the sexual abuse and so forth. Guys, tune in on Monday. I am going to be starting a series. It's going to be a Black Love series for the month of November. So I'm going to be here every Friday, but Monday I'm going to start off the series with, it's actually going to be based on a book. It's going to be based around a book. So the book starts off with 5 different type of women who try to love black men. That's how it starts off. And so it has like, actually, let me just give you guys a real peek into it before I leave so you can kind of have an idea of um when let me see. Let me pull it up right now so I can name all 5 of them for you guys, just to give you guys a preview of what Monday is going to be. Make sure you guys tune in, okay? Especially the women. Make sure y'all tune in, because it's going to be a very honest conversation that we're gonna have to have. We're gonna have to have it, okay? So um, this pretty much starts off with like the 5 different types of women who love black men. And first of all, they go through, let me see. Here we are. Okay. The 5 most common love substitutes is what they call them. So we have the pleasers, right? Guys, I was reading it. And then there's the controllers. Okay. And it tells you all about them. So you'll be able to figure out which one you fall under when we go over it on Monday. We have the rescuers, that those are the captain saver, whatever. So those are the rescuers. And who else? I think there's 2 more. The avoiders. And the last one, I think, is the bashers, right? So you have the pleasers, the avoiders, the bashers, the rescuers, all of these personality types, right? As it pertains to loving black men and how we tend to show up when it comes to trying to love black men. So I'm gonna go over those 5 on Monday. It's gonna be a very interesting conversation. We're gonna have some fun with it, and we're gonna be honest and try to identify ourselves in one of those. And yeah, just a light conversation on Monday. So I thank you guys for coming to hang out with me today. It was a slower day today for me, and so I will see you guys next week at 6 p.m. on Monday. Thanks for being here and hanging out with me. And until next time, and check out my community page for Siraj's flyer. I'll put it on the community page for you guys if you guys want to tap into that, because I think it's going to be he has a pretty powerful panel. I'm not going to even lie to y'all. He has a powerful panel. And they're going to be talking about the relationship between black men and black women and how we could better protect each other. So check the community page out between now and tomorrow. And until next time, guys, make sure you guys enjoy your weekend. Have fun. Love on the people around you. Hold them tight. Keep them close. And enjoy the rest of your evening. All right, guys. Peace.